Please explain to my community, what do you do in the atheist movement?
Well, I do a lot of these speaking gigs, of course, and my primary interest or motivation is promoting secular politics and particularly how they affect education, science, sex, social studies in particular. I also make a educational classroom supplement video series teaching biology to middle school and high school students. We're heading up the Phylogeny Explorer program, which is a great way to learn evolution. It's going to be a encyclopedic online representation of the complete tree of life, and that it's taken forever to get that through. There's I think one last glitch that they're working through, and then it'll all be in the data entry stage, and we should be at that stage now. And I often find myself doing, the conferences and the conventions, but also protesting on the steps of the state capitol and that sort of thing, as you do.
What's your background? What led you into those activities? I know you were a believer once, so what was the catalyst?
I was a believer in a different sense than a lot of your ex-believers were. First of all, I didn't believe what I believed on faith. I didn't force myself to believe things. I didn't, try to reaffirm my faith and that sort of thing. Because a lot of people do that. If they find something that seems to run counter to their faith, they try to ignore it. They do a little bit of confirmation bias. They do the Morton's demon kind of thing. And with me, I didn't realize that was something that had to be done because I didn't realize that the things that I believed in weren't true.
Now, when you say believe on faith, can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, now belief on faith as I understand it, and this is justified by scriptural references in the dictionaries, of course. We get a consensus of dictionaries, but then also all of the references in Scripture, not just in Christian, but also in Hindu and Muslim Scripture. I read the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about faith in the same way. It's all belief that is not based on evidence. And the way that I phrase that is that it's an assumption, or it's a complete, or let me say, faith is an assumption of unreasonable conviction that is assumed without reason and defended against all reason. That's the best way that I've been able to describe that. And a lot of people want to argue that faith is just a synonym of trust, but it really isn't. I mean, when you look at a dictionary, you will find two different contexts for faith. And the one where they're talking about faith as being trust exists only in the dictionary. When you're talking about it in the context of religion, if you go to the sermons of theologians past and present and virtually any collection of documents you want, they're all going to verify that it is actually believing what you want to believe because you want to believe it and you don't need any evidence, and it wouldn't matter if you saw evidence to the contrary, you're still going to believe what you want to believe.
If you wanted to explain to an atheist, someone who doesn't really care about those issues, what reason would you give that person to convince him that those issues are actually worth paying attention to?
If you're trying to talk about, or if you're talking about trying to get other people interested in actually doing something or taking action or at least caring what's going on.
That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, for the longest time I was in that boat. I mean, I never voted until I was like a middle-aged man by the time I ever voted for the very first time. Throughout my 20s, I didn't know what a Democrat or Republican was. I couldn't tell the difference between them. I really didn't care. And a lot of people don't. They feel disassociated by society. But then there is a certain amount of power that you actually do have. And I see people exercising it, and I see people making a difference. And I want to inspire more people to exercise that power and make a difference because it actually can happen, and it actually does work. The most frustrating thing that I ever hear is when people say, well, there's no point in voting, it's a broken system. And you know what, okay, fine. Whenever there's a low voter turnout, the Republican clown car wins because the neocon conservatives always vote as a bloc, just like their church tells them to. They're out there voting. So when you don't cast a vote, it is the same thing as casting a vote for the religious conservatives.
You said it well.
Oh, there's one more thing I got to add about that, because they also want to say that your vote doesn't count. Well, if your vote doesn't count, then why would it be that you have these landslide elections for the Republicans when there's low voter turnout? And why would the Republicans be so interested in doing gerrymandering in every state so that they can try to minimize the influence of the opposing party? Obviously, your vote really does count.
Mm-hmm. What do your parents and friends generally think about what you do, assuming they're not in the movement?
Well, you're talking about my family and my friends that I knew before I was an activist that aren't a part of what I do now, there's not really a point that I can explain anything to them. It's a frustrating thing that, my family doesn't talk to me anymore.
And you yourself come from, if I'm not mistaken, a Mormon background?
Yeah, it's not the hardcore Mormon that most people think of. And my family was pretty much divided. I had the boring goody two-shoes Mormons, and then I had people that frankly didn't care what religion was, and they were called Jack Mormons, which is another way of, well, the Mormons don't ever write you off their books. Once you're on their books, then you remain a member for life, and this is how they can boast that they have 14 million people worldwide. I'm on their list of people that they have, to give you an idea. Well, most of my family are the type of people that, or at least half of my family are the type of people that they do the drinking and the carousing, the womanizing and all of that sort of thing, and they still call themselves Christians. And if they had to say a denomination, they'll say Mormon. But they don't know what Mormon means, and they don't know what Christian means.
What do you think about people who call themselves spiritual but not religious? I knew it was a good one.
What does that even mean?
It
reminds me of when Oprah Winfrey says that atheists don't have awe and wonder. Right? Well, I would say that atheists have more awe and wonder because we know actually what measurements are and things that tangibly exist compared to the other things we can verify exist. We don't have to make up something to then exaggerate it to pretend that it's bigger than big or cooler than cool or whatever that they want to do. When people talk about their spirituality and they're talking about that they're kind of an atheist spirituality, they're really only talking about aesthetics, and maybe they're talking about humanist values, but sometimes they're talking about this supernatural aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know when they say that exact phrase, it could mean half a dozen different things. So I like to inquire, so do you think that people have psionic powers? Do you think we're all psychically connected? Do you think we're, what is it that you're imagining here? Because if it is only that they are inspired by the wonder of the universe and all of that, well, then that's the kind of pantheism that Einstein and Spinoza were, and they were comfortable saying that, at least from the Christian perspective, just write us off as atheists, because that's the only way you're going to understand it.
What means did you mostly use to learn about science, especially evolution? Because at some point you didn't know all that encyclopedic knowledge that you have now.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had a little bit of a foothold in. By the time I was in second grade, one of my teachers recognized that I had an interest in animals and so forth, and she gave me a book about dinosaurs, and that book about dinosaurs had a cladogram in it, a tree of life. And so, I looked at that. I looked how birds are closer to dinosaurs, and dogs are closer to cats than they are to cows, and just everything fits in this tree of life, and this is the explanation for all of these little commonalities. Then, as an adult, I did something foolish that a lot of young people do. When I went to college the first time, I went as an art major because I didn't have any proper guidance. Later on, I wisened up a little bit and went for science. I had already been, with the advent of the internet, I'd been on a learning curve, consuming everything that I could for years. I was just reading scientific articles and ancient literature and all of this, comparing the old mythologies on one side and then also what they're discovering in science on the other. And I spent years doing that, and then finally went back to school for it.
Great. Yeah, you said in one of my favorites video, the fourth foundational falsehoods of creationism, that you were a student of paleontology at the University of Texas, but you're no longer, are you?
No, there was a number of, life happens when you're making other plans. a number of life-changing events that happened to me pretty much all at once. And it meant that going to college the next semester was not possible. So, and it was actually several things.
Okay, I'm not asking you what they were, but no.
Yeah, it was a sad thing because I mean, here this late in life, I mean, I have so much respect for academics. I would have loved to have been able to pin those little letters behind my name, and I'm sorry to say that that's just never going to happen.
AronRa, PhD.
Well,
you say it's never gonna happen.
At this stage, no. I mean, the reason that I wanted the degree, honestly, was so that I could do the Philology Explorer project, but that's happening anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so I don't need to. I'm actually making my.
And it's gonna be peer-reviewed anyway. So.
Exactly.
Ah, cool. How would you describe the scientific method, and how is it so important in our lives?
You can put science in a simple application for just general epistemology. I mean, how do you know that you're not just fooling yourself? And I leave out the philosophical questions about how do you know that you're not just a brain in a vat and that all reality is illusion. Let's just assume that
fuck
reality...
that. We already had the debate with Psy. That's
Let's
good.
just assume reality is real by definition. Now, within the context that reality is real, how do we know that we're really being fair with our information? I mean, there's a lot of people that, if they were wrong about something, they don't want to know. And we've often heard from religious people, you know, if this is wrong, I don't want to be right. That's not a position that I can hold. I want to understand things. And if you want to understand things, right, I mean, there's some people that just need to believe, right, and they're going to find some way to reaffirm that faith. But if you want to understand, then you want to make sure that the information is accurate. Because if your information is not accurate or your interpretations are not accurate, then your understanding is not going to be accurate. And the only way to improve your understanding is to seek out the flaws in your current perspective and correct them.
What are the most objectionable passages in the Bible, or the silliest?
Yeah, I'll give you my favorite quote of the Bible that is not silly. Let me start with that one. Ezekiel 3:18 to 21, I think, is the reference. And that is where it talks about how men are animals. And if you don't believe that you're an animal, that's just your own vanity. And where it actually says, and this is supposed to be God's word, remember, where it says, who knows whether the spirit of man rises and the spirit of breath, or the spirit of the beast goes into the earth. Men are beasts. And we all go to the same place, and to believe anything else is vanity. So just accept your lot in life. It's a beautiful philosophy, and it's contradicted by the entire rest of the Bible. But the most repugnant line out of the entirety of the Bible is where, to me, it is my personal favorite, is the one where Moses gets angry at his men because he's told them to go out and kill everybody in the city of Midian. And they come back having saved all the women and children. And now Moses, being a prophet of God, is angry because they were merciful. So he orders that they slaughter the little boys right in front of their mothers, and then murder the mothers right in front of their daughters. And then he said to keep the preteen girls for yourselves as long as they're virgins.
In all those years debating creationists and theists, what were the most notable or the biggest accomplishments you've had? Do you frequently change minds, for instance?
Yes. I have to say that you know, there's a lot of opposition when you're challenging people's deep-seated beliefs, but I get a lot of very positive emails and comments from people that tell me that they were struggling with their belief, or they used to believe until they started hearing me and then started evaluating or maybe checking into some of the things that I said. And I've got, I don't know, a conservative estimate. I know I have over 100 thank you letters from believers saying that I helped them understand something that they hadn't even thought about before. And that's very, very encouraging to me, and I'll take that to my grave.
If you could have a few formal debates with religious apologists or fraudulent advocates of pseudoscience, who would they be?
It wouldn't be the people that are doing that professionally. The people that I really want to get on stage and actually have a conversation with on camera: Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, Ben Carson, I mean, Bobby Jindal.
Yeah.
You know, all of these people. I mean, there are so many senators. No, we're not just talking about presidential candidates. I mean, every state has state representatives who regularly say outrageously stupid things, denigrating science and promoting mysticism. And I want to call these people to task. You know, Alabama's Chief Justice, Judge Roy Moore, probably my number one target. I would love to have a conversation with that guy, because talk about somebody who talks all day about something they don't know anything about. That would be a brilliant conversation.
Speaking of brilliant conversation, you've expressed your political differences with Penn Jillette, an atheist that we both admire, but of course he's kind of controversial in the atheist movement for his earlier stances on global warming and libertarianism still today. And if you were on his podcast, you know, Penn Sunday School, what would you want to confront him about?
I didn't realize that I had the opportunity to do that once upon a time. I was in the room with Penn Jillette, and they were doing a podcast with Emory, and my friend Christina Redd was at the mic, and she just got up and left. Apparently Penn had said something that pissed her off, and she left. And without a word. I didn't know that I was welcome to just sit down at that mic and have an argument with Penn Jillette. Now, I admire the man. I do, as a speaker in particular. There's a lot of stuff that he and I do side together on. You know,
I understand that.
I have differences with every atheist there is.
Sure.
And most of the differences that I have with most of the atheists are going to be relatively trivial. There is this one or two things that Penn and I could argue about, and I thought it would be a brilliant opportunity to have an argument with Penn Jillette that we were like chocolate cake. I mean, what a great gift to get on because that man is a fantastic speaker.
Yes.
You know, to get on microphones and really have it out from the heart, that would be great.
Yeah, sure.
I hope that was a good enough answer.
Yeah. Maybe specific issues you would talk about.
The libertarian.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, to his credit, Penn did recant his earlier ideas about global warming or climate change or what have you. I don't think that he understands the importance of biodiversity. But he did concede that, you know, the anthropocentric climate change is actually a thing. So, I mean, I give people credit when it's due.
In all the beautiful videos you did, what are your personal favorites?
I really like taxonomy, systematic cladistics. I mean, so I've done a few videos talking about the evolution of different lineages. A lot of people really like the one about pterosaurs. There was one that I actually prefer, was the two-part series on the evolution of dogs and the evolution of cats.
Yeah, that's a good one.
In the first video, I was a little too hateful against Ray Comfort. The video lost quality because it could have been more educational than it was, and I really didn't need to launch against Ray Comfort the way I did. I could have just made a passing remark and moved on. I wish I had done that. Otherwise, the dog and the cat evolution videos would have been my favorites. What a lot of other people say is their favorite video that I've done is the
PAStAHCon.
No, it's not PAStAHCon. It's an anthropological moment in time.
If you could direct my people to some of the work you've done, what would it be?
My Patreon is certainly appreciated. I do this full time, and so I do actually need all the support we can get. So patreon.com/AronRa.
Yeah, his videos are of fantastic quality and his talks are great. And okay, I'm done embarrassing you.